Hi,
Hello.
Chris.
Yes. Hi there, Sora. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Can we see you? You got your camera on or not?
Uh, have you
I
got the
saw. I
Have you
saw
got?
you. I saw
Oh,
you before. Oh, there you are.
all right.
Hi,
That's good.
Bevan. Oh, look how civilized we're all together. Um, uh, Chris. I think you know both Jane Sullivan and Dr. Devine. I think you met them both in Australia.
I think I met Jane briefly, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Devine and I met you at the lunch table downstairs.
Right, right.
Remember?
I do, I do.
That was
Uh,
You must have had a great trip. It was
It was phenomenal.
yeah, that was fun. I think everyone enjoyed having you on the set too. To have someone come so far to see the show, it was a sort of really spoke about how much you must love the show.
uh,
It speaks about the quality of the show.
Yeah, that's
um,
great.
Chris, before we start, in the corner is Kathy and David Bowles. They're in Australia, and David is our technical guru, and he records these chats, so all 5,000 of our members get to hear everything you have to say.
Great. Hello, Kathy, David. How are you?
Chris, I think I'd like to start. Tell everybody what your job is. What does the series producer responsible for?
Yeah, series producer. I'm really in charge of the day-to-day running of the show. I'm kind of making sure that all the elements fit together, and that the you know the I me with a team of other people put together, the crew, the cast, and it's kind of like an overview that I have of the whole production, and making sure that the whole production uh, stays true to the scripts. It's one of those strange jobs where you're overseeing a lot of people, but I guess the thing about it is I like to think of it as like this too, is it's making sure everyone stays in a kind of like in a broadest possible sense. It's making sure everyone stays on the same page. It's making sure that we're all following a common goal. Because when you've got a whole team of very creative and very talented people, from the photographer to the sound recorders to the person composing the music, to the writers, to the actors, to the directors, there's all these people with disparate views of the show, and it's making sure that they all have a coherent vision that we all share, if that makes sense. And that's kind of like the most creative way I can express it. And I feel that's my job, and I'm doing it well if I can make sure it's not for me to say that's what it will be, but it's just for me to be able to say, hey, this is what we all agree it will be, and move forward with it. And I tend to take, in my mind, it all comes from the writing, and so Bevans has a very clear vision of what the show is, as I'm sure you know from having spoken to him. He has a very clear idea of what it is and what it's saying, and so I guess I'm just ensuring that gets carried through from all levels of the production. You know what I mean? Right from things as simple as the wardrobe to the set dressings, to the music, to the photography, the lighting, the locations. It's someone who's overseeing that. So.
Chris, how did the original team come together? Bevan wrote something and brought it to the network, brought it to the production company, or how did that come about?
Yeah, Bevan, had this idea that I think he'd had for some time, and took it to the network, for Channel 7, which is a free-to-air network here in Australia. And they've got a great tradition of doing, really strong dramas. It's a really drama-focused network, and Bevan's also got obviously a terrific, history of producing successful dramas in this country as well. So, and it was something that was kind of bold and hadn't been done before, as you said. Those stories and those issues hadn't been raised before, and it was brave of Channel 7 to take it on, and they did, and it had good success. So that. I think part of it was that because it was a Bevan Lee project, the network were willing to take a risk on something that was out of the ordinary, and it's as they should too. I mean, it's risks like that are worth taking.
Chris, when the show was canceled and we had that abrupt end, and you sold the wardrobe and you all
Yeah.
went looking for other jobs, how did you get it all back together? You must have been shocked, but how did you reconstruct that team that had been so successful in those first 2 seasons?
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I tell that story a bit because it's extraordinary that I've never ever had anything like that or been involved in that, anything like that happening before. So, we spent an awful lot of money, as you can see, on those sets, building those sets. The detail in them is really, precise, and we've got period wallpapers, and we've got, we scoured the country for set dressings. And so all the fabrics and all the furnishings were really, went to a lot of trouble and a lot of expense to make sure they were all correct. And so, and similarly with the wardrobe, and we literally had hundreds of boxes full of, fabulous wardrobe and jewelry and hats, you name it. And when we found out the show had been cancelled, well, we broke up all the sets and we sold all the things we could sell. Some of the sets were broken up, and the window frames, for instance, we could sell them on to someone else, and the doors and things like that. So it was just completely, gotten rid of every last article. I remember we had a big fire sale here down the road where we put it in storage for a little bit, and then a lot of the things we didn't want to throw away were like the props, some beautiful old props, and furnishings and clothes and jewelry and even cars. And we had a big fire sale where people were invited to come along to the warehouse and buy stuff, and we sold every last bit of it, and we finally left with a few tables full of things. It was like a great big garage sale. Tables full of things we couldn't get rid of, no one wanted, so we ended up giving them to charity. So the funny thing was, and we just literally finished sweeping the studio floor out, we've got a vast studio here too, the sets are very big. We literally finished sweeping that out, and within a few days of that happening, we had a call saying that another network, Foxtel, are interested, and there's a possibility it might be coming back again. And because the timing was so exquisitely, perfectly bad, because we could have saved it. But look, that just presented another challenge. And luckily, we were, Foxtel came to the party, and they were really enthusiastic and passionate about bringing the show back, and they had a great deal of love and care for the shows. So they allowed us the time to put it all back as it was. And so we had a team of, set dressers and buyers and wardrobe people, even things like wigs and things like that, and some of the accessories. We went back and we sold a lot of the stuff to collectors, and so we were able to get, I think we got about 30% of the furnishings and set dressings and things back. But of course the set had to be rebuilt completely. And what made it even more difficult was that the end of season 2 to the beginning of season 3, no time was passed. It was literally the next moment. Had it been like 3 years later or something, you could have forgiven a few things looking different. But literally, it was season 2 finished and season 3 began in the next minute. So we had to make it all. So there was direct continuity throughout the scenes and for all their wardrobes and the way people looked. And so when we rebuilt the sets, we basically had to get out the old plans, dust off. Luckily, we hadn't thrown them away. We had all the same old, the architectural drawings and all the details of the things we bought. I think we managed to recreate it almost perfectly. I mean, I certainly couldn't tell the difference. I don't think anyone will. There's a few little bits and pieces that I'll defy anyone to notice, that where the set dress changed, like there's a chair that's different, or there's a painting we couldn't find. And Fiona Donovan, who's our production designer, even went to the trouble, because one of the wallpapers that was in one of the rooms was a really difficult to source period fabric wallpaper, beautiful wallpaper. When we got rid of that, we just had to throw it out because we couldn't save that. Obviously, it was stuck to the walls. When it came time to recreate that set, we couldn't find that wallpaper anywhere. It just disappeared. So Fiona got a sample of a photo of it, and then had it digitally recreated and blown up, and so it was a digital copy, which again unless you were really close to it, touching it, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So we went to an enormous amount of trouble to make sure that it was exactly the same, and I think 99.9% of it was exactly the same.
Were you able to get your crew back?
Yeah, we were actually. And look, we've been really blessed on this show because the people who work on it really love working on it. And we've got really, as you know, I'm sure you know, really talented, experienced crew on it. And I think what people love about the show is, A, it knows what it is, and it has a really, I talk about this clear vision of what it is and what we're trying to say. And also, it's a chance to do something that you don't get to do that often over here, at least, is that period drama, and particularly a period which is not usually shown, instead of being the 50s. So people are jumping at the chance to come into a show where you get a chance to have these production values and also show this era, you know, with the clothes, the fashions, the hair, the sets, you know, the locations. It's all kind of like exciting territory if you're, in one of the creative departments here.
Donna,
Yes.
go ahead.
Well, since I'm one of the people based, or of the three, we're all based in America, and you know there's tremendous interest here. I'm just wondering if you think, if you sense a great deal more interest in Australia than ever before, and that this has led to really popularity, not only globally but particularly in America, where it's not easy to we have to find the streaming. It's not really broadcast on the major public TV, so you have to do some work to hear about it first and then to find it.
Yeah. Look, it's funny because we're kind of isolated. I feel a bit isolated out here, and I don't really. It's until these times when I look at the international Facebook page, or I engage with people like yourselves, that I get to understand how popular it is in you know, all over the world. I'm kind of always like taken aback by it a little bit in a good way, and it's really exciting to hear. But to be quite honest with you, it's only in those times that I do that, and we're, as I say, kind of insulated here. I know it's like I get most of my feedback through the Facebook page, to be honest with you, or, you know, anecdotally. I've got an aunt living in California who tells me about how she loves it and all her friends love it, and similarly, someone I know in England and Holland. So sort of anecdotally from friends, yes, but probably not so much in the broader context. I know that Australia and TV, with things like Miss Fisher's murder mysteries, have been, you know, becoming more popular and all over the world, which is great. I mean, it's terrific.
You know, Miss Fisher is a mystery, and it's all about the clothes. Why do you think that you're being seen in 144 countries by people who under any other circumstances would have nothing in common, and they love a place to call home, and they love every detail and every character and every car? How do you think this happened?
Well, I think it's the writing. I think it's the stories and the characters, and it's the writing. I kind of believe everything comes from that, and we can only realize the writing well. I mean, that's the best thing we can do is realize the writing well, and hopefully that's what we do. And when I say we, I mean everyone else involved apart from the writers, so the actors, the directors, everyone. They take the writing, and so I think they're really powerful stories that have a heart, you know, and I think they're things that people can relate to, and it's dealing with issues that you don't see dealt with on television that much. Well, certainly, you know, you think about the things that we're dealing with, and particularly when it started were quite controversial: religion, race, sexuality, class, all those things are not often dealt with, and if they are, they're dealt with individually. To have a show that mixes those things up and deals with them in a kind of a really frank way, and what the 1950s allows you to do is to see them through the prism of another time and have the perspective on them, a different perspective on them, which allows you to sort of reassess your own perspective of today, if that makes sense. I think about the religious aspect. I think is amazing because traditionally, I don't know, it's always been the same, but that's always been a bit of a taboo. It's like, politics and religion and things you never discuss at, Christmas dinners. It's a bit like that on television. Religion is one of those things you don't often discuss on TV drama. It's just, it's too divisive sometimes, or it's boring, or whatever it is. But I think the beauty of this show is Bevan's managed to find a way to do that and make it powerful stories that can to resonate with everyone. No matter whether you're religious or not, or whichever religion you belong to, you can identify with the stories.
Jane, you're on.
Okay. I have lots of questions. I'm not sure which one you want me to ask, but since you were talking about period drama and you had produced Packed to the Rafters and now this, so what's the difference in producing period drama as opposed to a modern series? That was
another one of Bevan's shows. That was an incredibly popular show over in Australia. It was the number one drama for 5-6 series maybe, and they've been one of Bevan's creations. And the difference is the detail. Really, it's all about the detail. And as I say, what I found about it is that people love doing it. Like you find a wardrobe designer, for instance, Lisa. She's terrific, and she's had a lot of experience. But this is the kind of thing she lives for, because she's getting to create all these glamorous outfits from a really glamorous period that she would never get to do normally. So for her, for Packed to the Rafters, she was just really, I'm oversimplifying it, but she was able to just walk down to the shops and buy. That was a very middle-class show about a middle-class family in the suburbs. So the clothes were just the kind of thing you could just go down to the local mall and buy pretty well. It wasn't as simple as that, because she had to sculpt them too. But now she gets a chance to work on something where you have characters like Anna or Carolyn, who are these fabulous, wealthy, beautiful women who can be dressed up in these, there's a reason for them to be dressed in these very stylish and beautiful clothes, which, one of the things we spoke about right at the beginning was when we were doing this, is with the wardrobe and the looks with the hair and the makeup, was that we wanted it to be aspirational. We wanted it to be true to the period that it was we're creating here in the 50s, but we wanted people to be able to look at it and go, wow, that looks great. I'd love to look like that now. You know what I mean? And we didn't want to look at sort of fussy and fuddy-duddy. So I think Lisa's been able to come up with that, and as has Wizzy, our makeup and hair designer. They've created these looks which are, whilst true to the period, kind of aspirational, and you look at them and you go, that looks so beautiful. I wish I could wear that,
Well, I'm sure you're aware that the Australian fans show up at all their get-togethers decked out in poodle skirts and saddle shoes. So that's kind of an amazing thing that it's inspired this fashion craze. Chris, how many people does it take to pull off an episode?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I can answer that one. So someone asked me that recently, and I was able to, I had sort of sitting down and counting everyone, I was able to work it out quite easily by looking at how many people we invited to the Christmas party, or the wrap party, and that was 120 people.
Wow.
There's probably a few more than that if you add a few more people who weren't able to make it, but it's probably in the order of somewhere between 120 and 140.
Now, you spend some of the time at Ash Park and part of the time in studio space. what is the logistics of taking a production from one location to another?
Yeah, it's pretty big. Look, by Australian standards, it's a big production. We have quite a few trailers, and it's the nature again of being a period show is that you've got to have a bigger art department because everywhere you go, you've got to remove all the, the current, everything that says it's 2017 and replace it with things from 1958. So that makes it for more trucks for the art department. And similarly with everything, with the the hair and makeup trucks, you've got more people and more of their trucks. So everything's bigger because of that. And also, obviously, wardrobe, again, you've got a much bigger truck because you're going to have every extra. You can't just ask extras as you normally would for a contemporary show. You just normally ask them just to wear, say, you're going to a funeral, so wear a suit. Well, you can't do that on this show. We have to bring people in and get them measured and fitted and find suits for them. And then on the day they have to go. So it's just everything's bigger and there's more of it. So certainly in terms of an Australian show, this would be considered quite a big show. I can't remember how many vehicles there are, but suffice to say, it's like a football field filled with vehicles and trucks and things down there. And we're kind of lucky because the location's only an hour away from Sydney, so it's about an hour on the freeway down south to Camden where we shoot the exteriors and we shoot all the so. We don't it's not too far away. So, the way it works out is we tend to do the show in 3-week blocks. So each block consists of 2 episodes. So it's 15 days to shoot 2 episodes. And it kind of breaks out roughly that we do 5 days on location down in Camden and a couple of days will usually be down at the house or around about the big old house there, the exteriors of that. And then a couple of days will be somewhere on the bush, on some of the bush roads or some of the farms around that area. And we usually get about 5 days down there. And we come up here and we do about 5 days shooting in Sydney, in the city on location. So we'll find, typically the things like, some of the hotel rooms or the city streets or the big clubs or the Gentlemen's Club for George. They'll be in Sydney. And for instance, the hospital exterior, that's just around the corner here in the city, even though it looks like it's in the country, it's actually up. And then the 3rd week we'll usually spend in the studio here. So that's kind of how the logistics work. And we tend to, sometimes if we get a bigger episode, we might do an extra day. Extra day or two, but we tend to run pretty much that we're locked into that cycle.
Chris, how long does it take from the table read until an episode is in the can?
Yes. Well, a table read usually happens about a week before we start shooting. So there'll be a table read, and a week later we'll start shooting, and that takes 3 weeks. It takes about 3 weeks to edit it. So it's 7 weeks, and then about 12 weeks to post-produce it, put the music on it, and all finish it. So what's that? It's about 19, 20 weeks.
Wow. Yeah. That's like a movie.
Yeah, it is, except that once we get moving, we turn it over much faster. So it's coming out, like once every 3 weeks we're churning out 2 episodes,
Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the shots that involve horses and cars? Can you share a little bit about how you make it look so real?
Well, we try and do it as real as possible, and sometimes the technology is getting pretty advanced these days, where you can do car interiors, for instance, and use green screens, or if not green screens, put up giant televisions now outside the windows and make it look like it's actually in a traveling car when you're sitting on a studio floor. And that's becoming advanced. But we try to do it as much as we can practically. So we're actually in a car driving with the real people, just to give it that sort of truth. It makes it. I think people can tell that it feels a little bit more real. And so there's all sorts of different rigs that we use. There's cameras that sit on the bonnet of the car. And one of the ones people love, a lot of the directors love using is a traveling crane. So it's a utility vehicle with a big arm on the end of it with a remote control camera that travels, in front, beside, behind the action vehicle, and the camera can sort of twirl and go all over the place. It's a really very cool tool to use, and they're usually radio mics, so the actors can just drive along and as they would normally, and the camera will be able to find really interesting shots as they're driving. And similarly with the horses, as I was telling you earlier, that some of the actors are good riders. For instance, Brett's a very good rider. He's had a lot of experience, with horses on camera over his career, so he's really good. But even then, we have to be careful, because the worst thing that could possibly happen is that one of them hurts themselves. So whenever we can, we try to double them. And typically for a long shot, we put double on no matter who it was, even if they're a good rider, because there's nothing to be gained by risking them when they're so valuable to us, and their safety is paramount.
Jane, you have another question?
Yes. Okay. So Bevan came up with the idea. He went to Channel 7. You were already working on Packed to the Rafters, so they just picked you. Did you pick Noni and Marta and Brett?
Not me personally. It was a really very much a group decision. There was probably at least 10 people involved in that decision. Yeah, and we all had a say, and everyone has a say. But at the end of the day, it's probably the networks, who have the final say. But we all kind of have to agree. I think it's sort of an agreement that. But Noni, when I say pick Noni sort of picked herself, because I don't know if you're aware, she's very much an icon in Australia, and we're very lucky to have her on the show. She's obviously, as you all know, she's just such a talented and wonderful person. So in that respect, we're lucky that she picked us. And having said that for Noni, I should say for the rest of the cast too. These things just have I think that's the beauty of the show. These things just have this magic way of falling into place, and we just got the perfect cast for the show. So, and that doesn't always happen. It's just the right people at the right place at the right time. It's like synchronicity, when things like that fall into place so easily. And there was never any real doubt about anybody. I remember, for instance, one of the first people we saw when we were casting for it, I think probably the very first person we saw casting was Abby Earle as Anna. And she walked in and did a read. And it was like, oh, my God, that's exactly how we saw Anna. It was like it was impossible to see anybody else and not think, we were always comparing it to Abby. So, that happened quite a lot. It was just right people at the right place in the right time.
Chris, I've been around actors my whole life, and they can be a very difficult lot of people to work with, especially when they're really talented.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the dynamic of having an ensemble like that, and how do you, I know that there's a team, you have a director, you have all these people, but you have managed to get all of them to act at an extremely high level. There isn't a weak link. How do you wrangle all of them, and how do you keep, a balance so egos don't get in the way, all the kinds of things that any of us who have ever managed people have to deal with?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, look, again, I think I'm very lucky that we've got such a talented cast. And, I think, look, part of it comes from, I think when you've got the leads that we do, and we have a really like Marta and Noni, as I spoke of before, and and Brett and Craig, who are all, and Sarah, all of them, all are very experienced people. They sort of set an example for everyone else, and really, I think that kind of thing filters down from the top of the the leads of the cast, and and Marta, for instance, is such a professional, and she's so dedicated to what she does, and that it sets an example, and as is Noni and Brett, and they set an example for everybody else. It's the younger members, for instance, who some of them with less experience than they have, but they see them, and they see their craft and their professional attitude to their work, that it's great because it really bonds and binds the cast together. So I think that's what probably has been such an asset on this show, is to have such experienced professional people at the top of the tree. And like I say, Marta and Noni and Brett have an awful lot of experience between them, and just know, they're just consummate professionals, and set this example for people.
Donna?
I'm interested in going back to something you said about integrating the different themes, the religion, the sexuality, class. And I'm wondering if at the end of a season you have the entire cast or the important people in the staff sit down and watch all of the episodes together and discuss it, thinking that it will help integrate the next season. And also another question that I've always wanted to ask about the music. You said that towards the end you integrate the music in the season, and some of it seems so creative, particularly when you are counterpointing. I can remember in season 1, in the Day of Atonement, towards the end, there's the scene in the mikveh, counterposed to the scene in the church, and then there's Anna and Gino making love, and there's a certain theme of Yuzurski that is played. Now, was this conscious? Who decided what to play at that point?
Yeah, well, your first question, that's a really good idea. I wish we could do that, is to get everyone together to watch the episodes through, like in a season. That would be a great thing to do. It's unfortunately, the trouble is that we don't get this finished episodes till 3 months after we finish shooting, and by that stage everyone's gone off in different directions. But it would be such a great thing to do, and I think I'd love to do it, because it'd be great to have everyone in the room together to be able to discuss it at the end of it and say, you know what, that was great, or that really worked well, or that worked well, or I'd be a great experiment to do, but we've never done it for that reason. The other question about the music, look, again, Michael Yuzurski, he's fantastic, and we're very lucky to have him, but he loves the show. He genuinely loves the show. So he puts a hell of a lot of work and hell of a lot of extraordinary passion into what he does with the music. And the way the music, it's kind of a bit kind of organic, the way that happens. Is what we do is we send him a copy of each episode without the music, and he comes up with like suggestions, and he's quite often he's got he knows the show so well, and he'll sometimes have questions about the intention of a scene. Like he'll have like, are we supposed to be telling the audience that, look out, this is going to happen? Or there may be times when that's where I might get involved and say, no, we want to make sure that we don't tell that part of the story yet. This is specifically just referring to her love for something. There's just defining the story beats exactly sometimes. But Michael just basically just comes up with it himself. And I think what happened was, at the very beginning of the show, there was quite a bit of experimentation before episode 1, the music. So we left quite a bit of time series 1, episode 1, to get the music right. And so Michael tried a whole lot of stuff, just threw different types of music at it, until we finally ended up with something that everybody, and we all sat around and said, what do you think of that version? Not, it's too melodramatic, or that's too orchestral, or that's too... So we ended up with something that, and once we decided on that, Michael's then taken that forward, and it's a variation on that theme all the way through. But having said that, I know he really, Bevan's probably spoken about it, but each series is kind of like has a definite sort of character. It's a definite, one series may be a more of a noir thriller, series 4 was. One might be a bit more, have a bit more be about redemption, or, so there's, and each one of those themes kind of introduces a new musical score too. So Michael likes to try and work with whatever the overall theme of the series is. And I may or may not have noticed this, the music evolves each series. It's slightly different. There'll be some of the same themes, but, for instance, series 4 had quite a bit more kind of electronic music in it. It was a bit darker. So, and so Michael loves that, the idea of evolving with the show as well, evolving the music with the show.
Chris, one of my favorite pictures that I post in the group all the time is the one taken at the Logie table with Noni and Jenny, and looking completely shocked. What? I don't know what took them so long, but what was, other than the obvious, honor, what has been the impact on winning the Logie had on A Place to Call Home?
Look, I like to think that it's actually made people, watch the show, and I think it's, created more of an audience for us. It's obviously, it's great. It's a great morale boost for everybody. Probably that's the impact I see the most. I mean, maybe that's being where I am. That's what I see. It's a really good morale boost for everybody who works so hard on the show, and then we get what's a very prestigious award in Australia. That's probably one of the best awards you can get as a drama show, because it's a peer nominated one. It's not the popular vote. Well, it's a peer nominated vote. So it's a recognition from all the other people within industry who have given us this honour. And so for everybody working on the show, it's a real boost. And I think I think that was just really nice timing for everybody at that we got that.
Do they have athletes? Athletes have written in their contracts that for every game they win, for every award they win, for every playoff game, they get paid more money. So do the actors have those kind of incentives? Did you have to write a big check to everybody because they won?
No, look, that would be great if it worked like that, but it doesn't. We could all get it.
Chris, I had certainly, until I saw A Place to Call Home, I had never heard of Noni Hazelhurst or Frankie Holden or Brett. I had, but Noni in particular, we're so loving the talent there so much that we're scrambling to find their movies and find their television shows and really catch up. And I got to say, there is nobody like Noni Hazelhurst. When you say she's a legend, we've become aware of it, and she is a legend to us, not just because we get to see her work, but because she has shared so much of her heart and soul with us. She really didn't have to engage with us. She could have, done a chat once a year, and but she's fully engaged, and she's shown herself to us to be not just a spectacular actress, but she's an outstanding human being. We post her speeches and her Logie speech and all of these different things. And for me, I see her as somebody who's really needs to be seen by everybody, because especially now, it's a terrible time in the entertainment business. It's rife with scandal. It's filled with people who are disillusioned about the medium. And Noni, I mean, her, not just her work, but her voice is very, very important. And Bevan's voice is very important. And we hope that our group can continue to be a vehicle to share this tremendous talent, not just of your actors, but of absolutely everybody who's associated with the show. And you say you're isolated out there in Australia. Well, we're really isolated from what goes on. We don't get to go to picnics. We don't get to see people in plays. We don't get to run into them in the mall. This is really our only way of connecting. And we're thrilled to be able to do it. And I know I speak for everybody when I say that we hope that we can continue to build the relationship and that we can continue to communicate because we love and respect you, and we're a captive audience. Every time somebody's in a play or has a video or anything, the fans, they come. Jane came all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, to see Marta in a play. This is the kind of thing that's been created, and it's also opened up. Frankie spoke so passionately about his love for Australia, and he spoke about his uncles and growing up and how his portrayal of Roy is reflected in that. And everybody has to piggyback on what Donna said. This show has opened up the entire country to all of us. I never heard of Perth before. I mean, I did, but all of these places, when people say, oh, I come from here in Australia and I come from here, and they all go to Sydney and have a lunch because some fan came from California on a holy pilgrimage. You have really opened us up to a beautiful new world. I never thought of going to Australia before, and now I think about it all the time. So
you'll be welcome. If you can come down, you should come down while we're shooting, and we can bring you on the set.
I plan on it.
Yeah, we should.
I certainly will. Chris, we don't ask for any spoilers, but 2 days. Season 5, long anticipated, rolls out here. Can you give us a sense of what we can expect? What's the mood? What's the...
Look, the mood is, it's a bit of a reset. We'll be jumping forward a few years, and things have changed, we think. I'm just trying to word it in such a way that I don't give too much away. Look, you'll find our characters in having moved on from season. Because season 4 was a bit of a wrap-up finish, and it tied quite a few storylines off. But a lot of shit been dealt with completely, and so when we come into season 5, we come into it and. On Anzac Day, which is our Memorial Day remembrance of people who died in conflicts in Australia and New Zealand, and we come into it in that context, and it's 1958, and the times have changed, and some of the traditions and some of the conservative values of Australia were starting to change, as they were in America too, with the advent of rock and roll and the youth culture and things like that. So, so we'll be dealing with some issues some issues. We've got a really fine actor. There's an Indigenous actor, Aaron Pedersen, who's playing a role of a returned serviceman. I hope I'm not giving too much away here, but I think this is all pretty much been like. He plays a returned serviceman, and so that's a story that's never been covered really. It's one of our sort of shameful stories of Australian history, which is where the Australian servicemen, when the Indigenous servicemen who went forward in World War II and Korea, they were never treated the same when they returned as the white soldiers were, and they were treated really poorly, and they were sort of kind of not quite betrayed by their country, but some of the promises that were made to them weren't fulfilled. And so it's a bit of a shameful part of our past that was never really discussed before. And this season is through the eyes of this character we're introducing, as I say, played by Aaron, who's a very, very highly prestigious actor in Australia. He's come onto the show, and we're really so fortunate to have him. As you'll see, he's a fantastic performance he does, and tells this story, which he was really keen to tell too, because it deals with something again that's a bold and kind of a very difficult subject to deal with. That's just one of the many stories and all your favourite characters are back in slightly different predicaments. For instance, Abby's character Anna is matured and become a more independent woman, but with that has come all sorts of other problems. So we find ourselves in the same characters and the same people, but their circumstances have changed, and it's how they react to those new changes. And with a few more elements of new characters. But I can say this though: the thing that I love about the show, and the thing that I love about Bevan's writing, is the element of surprise, is that you never really know where it's going. And I find that when I read the scripts the first time too, and I really enjoy it. And I think that's what people like too when they watch it, is they keep being surprised. And just when you think you know where it's going, they'll twist and they'll go off in another direction and you haven't anticipated it. And then it'll twist again. And there's certainly, this season has got a lot of that. There's a lot of surprises in store that you weren't expecting when you start off the series. Where it ends up, you will not expect it. And as I know you've seen some of it, with these deviations along the way to some really powerful drama. And it's got a great finish, a really good finish. Very satisfying wrap up to the stories. I'm really excited about this season. I know it's been generating a lot of chat on the from the fans in Australia about it, because it's tackling bold subjects again in a really what's the word, confident, and it's not controversial, but it's a really frank examination of some of the attitudes that not only relevant that in 1958, they're still relevant now.
Chris, when can we expect an answer about whether or not there will be a season 6?
Well, I'm hoping that they'll tell us before the season finishes here. So I would hope that sometime by the end of the year, but I don't know that because, but I'm hoping that's what we'll find out, and we've got our fingers crossed. It's been, like I say, that's one of the things. That's one of the other things that Logie brings you, is the, you hope that would make it more easy to get another season. That with that comes that recognition, and hopefully that's one of the things that will allow us to get another season. Certainly won't do us any harm.
When Foxtel picked up the show, it guaranteed 2 seasons, but all the other seasons we haven't necessarily been guaranteed. So did it make a difference producing season 3, knowing for sure there was going to be a season 4?
Yeah,
as
it did
opposed to
actually.
the other seasons?
Yeah. That's the first time that's ever happened, and the only time it's ever happened. In fact, even on the show that I worked on before this, Pact of the Rafters, which was the #1 rating show here, was huge. It was a very popular show. We still never knew one season from another. We never knew until just before we had to know that it was ever going again. We could make a fairly solid guess it would, but we didn't know for sure. So that's the first and only time in my career that I've ever heard of that happening, where we had 2 seasons definite. And I think it did. It gave us more confidence, I think, to with the stories we were going to tell, and knowing that we didn't have to, because quite often we have to sort of, just bear in mind that this may be the last season, so we want to make sure the fans are satisfied with it. So in that respect, season 3 was, and season 4 was a gift to be able to know that we had at least 2 seasons.
Doesn't it make it more difficult to nail down the actors when they don't know until the last minute if they're going to have that program? They should, they'd want to be looking for other alternatives.
Yeah, that's right. It does. Yeah. It's one of those things we have to balance, or not we, the network has to balance those things. But yeah, it is.
I'm sure they're all thrilled to have had a regular job for 5 years. That's not something that a lot of actors get to do.
Yeah.
Have a regular job.
I think that, look, and I keep saying it, and it's not, I'm being quite genuine too. And I think they really love the show too. I've worked on shows where, people are a bit more cynical about it, and, that it's more of just there's less passion for what they're making. But I think that's the beauty of this show, is that everyone feels very passionate about it, not only the technicians and the writers, but the cast as well. I think they know that they're doing a good show. We know we're doing something that speaks to a lot of people and is unusually, it's outside of anything that you would normally get to do as an actor, I'm sure, and have these such beautifully drawn characters, courtesy of Bevan, with such beautiful words to say. It's a gift, and I think the actors recognise that too. So in that sense, we're lucky, because they want to come back. Even,
Chris, before we let you go, other than A Place to Call Home, what are you watching on television?
Good question, because I do love watching television, and let me think. Look, I was watching recently. You've got me now, because I've completely skipped my mind. I loved Happy Valley, and I loved Wallander. I like Happy Valley, and I liked. There was a thing called Little Boy Blue. So I like I've got to say, I watch a lot of English drama. But having said that, Fargo was something that I loved too.
Oh, the series and the movie.
Well, the movie and has it 2
series.
or 3? I think it's 1, 2, and 3. We got the recent one with Ewan McGregor playing 2 roles. I just thought I just loved that. And, what else? God.
Do you see a lot of American stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Have you seen This Is Us?
No.
This Is Us.
Yes, I have. That was on here on Channel 10, I think, and I watched. That was great. I did enjoy it, but I haven't watched it all the way through. I think I've seen 2 episodes of it, so I know it was really successful in America, isn't it?
It's the #1 new drama, and it's the biggest thing, and it's the kind of it's not your quality, but it's certainly the best. It's the best drama running now. It does have all the elements.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, because it does too. It was just really good characters. I remember that was that ensemble of really interesting and diverse characters that was, and with great stories. So I can see what you're saying with a similarity to us. Yeah.
Well, it's really about people. No fancy car chases, no, bells and whistles. It's just a simple, well-written, well-acted drama. And it's...
I will say, you know what, that I think that maybe that the thing that draws me to TV shows too is the heart, you know. And I think that's something that Bevan brings to all his shows. Is they have a heart, they have a real. When I say heart, it's an emotional sort of foundation that has an optimistic and kind of a sense of optimism in the human condition, if you know what I mean, despite all the terrible failings that we may have, that there is something that sort of binds us together as this common humanity. And I was probably getting a little bit sort of wanky with it, but it's those shows that do that can bind people together through sharing a sense of this common humanity and dealing with the good part of people as well, and some being able to sort of shamelessly express that. And you know, it's things that make you cry and laugh, and but you know, births and deaths and things that are part of everyone's lives, but somehow managing to bring the heart, the human heart into it. And I think that's a show, for instance, that I found This Is Us has that, and I'm attracted to shows like that, and I think this show has it as well. But as opposed to something that's cynical, you know, like, and, you know, celebrates the dark side of humankind.
Right. Chris, thank you so much for doing this. You've answered so many questions, and now the members are going to really get a chance to understand how this beautiful series comes to us. So thank you so much. We all look forward to season 6. We hope that you will visit us again. Maybe we can talk after we all see season 5 and start looking at season 6. Again, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for asking me. And no, it really is a pleasure. I'm happy to talk about it. It's good. I actually don't get to talk about it that much like this, so I kind of learn something myself when I do. So it's good. I learned something from you guys when you talk about it, because it gives a perspective from the outside in, which I find really interesting. It's very, as I say, you become like a little bit isolated from people's how much it affects people and what it means to people. So it's great to hear it. And it's really satisfying to hear that it does make people, you bring something, we're all able to make people feel something.
Well, if you're ever down and feeling, oh, does anybody watch our show? Does anybody appreciate the hard work? Do they appreciate the 5 a.m. calls? Just call on us. We'll tell you how great you are and how grateful we really are for your fine work.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's lovely for you to say that.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to come out to Australia, just let me know and we'll get you onto the set. Make sure you come while we're shooting, that is.
I'm planning on it.
Okay.
Be careful what you wish for. I'll be there. Be well. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.